Hi, I've come out into the greenhouse today to get some sunlight because I feel as if I've been cooped up for some time now. I thought I'd come in here to start making a Christmas wreath. So I am in the greenhouse and I am going to make a Christmas wreath. When you're starting a Christmas wreath, it is usual to have some sort of frame. Now, I am going to be using these copper wire frames. These ones are actually, I think, 10 inches. And it's easier to deal with something that is consistent than the vine wreath bases that I've created myself. But either is fine. But with these wreath bases, obviously there are gaps and you need to fill that in so that you've got something solid that you can build your wreath upon. And that's where the moss comes in. It doesn't have to be moss. It can be straw or any other material that is going to create something, can retain a bit of water so that it's at least watering some of the greenery that's going to be on there. In a minor way, really. I don't think that's absolutely necessary. But it is what creates the structure. So the more moss you put in it, then the bigger and more voluptuous the wreath will be. So that you need to make sure you've got a full base. In the past, when I've made them, I have always used florist wire or mossing wire, and it works absolutely fine. But this year I thought I would try and be a little bit more sustainable, and I am going to try and use twine. This will decompose on the compost heap, so you can just easily dispose of it and keep your copper wire for your copper base for next year. So I'm going to try using this to hold it all together. And that's pretty much it to get us started. Let's talk about moss. It is not recommended to just go and forage moss from forest floors or anything like that. It is an environment in its own right there, and you're damaging it by removing it, which is why I suggested straw or something like that as an alternative. But I fortunately have some in-laws that have got a mossy bank that they were wanting to weed, and therefore I have helped them by weeding their bank and gaining an awful lot of moss to go with it. So first off, let's attach the twine to the wreath base. I am going to leave a tail because it's possible that I can use that as the hook for hanging it on the door. So really just tie a double knot. I'm going to use the wires here for help make it stationary so it doesn't swivel about everywhere and move, so it keeps it static, and just a nice length of twine to potentially create that your hook later on. So I'm left-handed, so I will probably be doing it in an opposite direction to how you would do it if you were right-handed. So I find it more comfortable with the twine in my left hand and going round that way. But if you're right-handed, you might find it preferable to go that way. And that will also be the case when you're putting your foliage on there. So just bear that in mind. If you're right-handed, you're probably going to do it slightly different to me. So what you need to do is just grab a bundle of moss and wrap the twine around it. Being mindful that this is what creates the shape of your wreath. So if you skimp on this, then it may well be that your wreath won't be as full as you expect. Now if you keep the twine near your body when you're doing it, then you can get a bit more tension than if you were doing it up at the top. Now I haven't cleared out this moss from anything, so there is twigs, leaves, everything in there, and really I'm just going for it. So create the sausages and just wrap it round, pulling it tight as you go. The wreath base complete. Now then, because we have this tail, we have something that we can easily tie it off with. But we're not going to detach it because we're then going to carry on making the wreath using the same length of twine. Right, let's get down to business. So I have the wreath that we made yesterday, and I have still got the string attached. So we are going to start with making bundles of ingredients. Some ingredients I will be leaving till the end, so anything that doesn't have a stem, such as a piece of apple or a pine cone, and the hydrangeas, although they do have stems, and they're too delicate to add in as you're going along. But everything else pretty much will be added in as we go. So when you're building up your wreath, you have to think of it in kind of 3 stages. So you've got your inner part, the top and the side. That's how I'm going to refer to it. So the inner sections, you don't want the material to be too long because otherwise you fill the hole. So they're short and you probably don't need as many of them. Whereas you might put a third less bunches around the inner circle as you do the outer. You can have longer bunches that go on the outer and it gives you more scope. So if you build a long bunch of something, then that will then, when you add that to the outer, you can see how much extra depth it creates on the wreath by doing that, as opposed to if that's kept short, and so we put that there, then it's so much shorter. So depending on what style, if you have them longer, then it's a looser arrangement, and you would have to like that kind of loose arrangement. So I am going to vary it a bit. Ideally, you're looking at hand-sized portions, slightly bigger for the edges, maybe slightly smaller for the inner bits. So let's build our first bunch. I'm going to start on the outside, so they're similar heights. Now it may be that you would like to get your bunches all ready in advance, and I'm going to put that so that it's the blue side over there. So I am going to put that on the outside here. Yeah. So for me, left-handed, so I am going to build it going anti-clockwise. Right-handed, you would be perhaps placing it that way and going round that way. So let's get that first one on. Actually, I'm going to put a bit of twiggery pokery in there as well. Now this first one, try and not put anything, the first section that we'll build up here, try not to put anything too prickly in. You'll find out why at the end, but it just saves your fingers. So let's just place that on the side and wrap it round a couple of times. And now let's build up a one in the middle. So I am going to make it a little bit smaller. So I haven't cut down everything in small sections because you kind of learn how to do it as you're going along. You add those bits in as you're going. So where's my small bits? That was that small section. That's the bluey bit. Now random is always better. So keep variety in your bunches. Don't keep doing the same thing because it will then be noticeable when you don't. If you keep a pattern, it will be more obvious when you make a mistake. So keep everything lovely and random as you can. So again, I've placed that one there. We can fill in gaps with the extra materials as and when we get to it. So again, this one is in the central section. So you want it covering up that central bit. So what you're doing is covering up your workings from the previous bunch that you made. So you place it over it, gradually working your way round. So wrap, wrap, some of the flowers. Now if you're putting flowers in, they're part of your decoration. You don't want to be hiding them. So make sure you put them at the top of your bunch. So we have another little bunch. Trim up the ends so that it's nice and neat. And then cover the last bit of workings. Be careful of the prickles as you get stuck with a one. So when you look at the back, you are gradually moving around the wreath. So we are getting close to the end. Just have this section here to fill in. So probably maybe 3 or 4 bunches that we need to finish the job. And that will go in there quite nicely. I think I want those berries on the outside. So I'm going to slot that in there, making sure I'm going to keep the ends quite small because I want to be able to tuck them in and hide them underneath the first ones. So let's get that in there. Making sure I'm round but not catching any of the first foliage. When we obviously need, I think we need another set. Again, trying to put it underneath everything so that you are catching none of the previous foliage, which is easier said than done at this point in the game. think we could probably be there on the outside, but we need to just put something together for the inside, trying to slot it underneath the first any gaps we can sort out once we've got the main area in. So let's do that. And this is where you don't want spiky things in the first bunch, because you're then fighting your way through it. So I think we need to cover this bit here. We can put that in there. That covers up that. And again, trying to be as careful as possible not to cover what you've already done. And pull it tight. Now I am going to stop there because we've got some decorations to put on that will make it all the better. So we have the tail that we had originally, so let's cut off make sure it's nice and firm, tying it off. And then to make a hook with the tail that you created before, just simply make a loop and then tie a knot in itself, really. And then cut off the ends. But I think there's a gap here for fern or conifer. We need to fill that gap there. And there is also a gap around about here, so we need that for fern. But other than that, it feels pretty good. So from there, I am then going to add in the extra decoration. So let me get those bits filled first. So the first extra bit of decoration I'm going to put on is the hydrangea. Now I am not going to put it on in a big flower head like that, because it's just going to be too much for the bouquet, for the wreath, because of how everything else is sitting. So what I'm going to do is snip it into smaller flower heads. So something like that fits in a lot easier. And again, I could, if I just place them, I could sprinkle them around. Traditionally, you know, put 3 or 5 around. But I think what I'm going to do in this one, this area here seems to be a bit of a green space, and up here is a green, definitely up here is a green space. So I'm going to put a bundle of them up here, but because they're now smaller flowers, then they won't protrude out as much as they would as one big flower. Just need to delicately separate the flowers. So I am going to, and so again, now that we've made them smaller, then the flower stem is so much more delicate. So what we need to do from there is take a piece of wire and thread it. What I do is just bend a little bit over and create essentially a more sturdy stem. So I have placed the wire into the flower. I will be the shorter end I will hold against the normal stem, squeeze the two together, and then just wrap the longer end around that shorter stem so that it creates a firmer area. And then once you've got that wire, it's just a matter of threading it through. Just thread it through and pull it in. It will now be a little bit more robust to get in. And then make sure, the problem with wires is that you don't want to damage doors. So what you need to do, I'm going to cut that shorter. You've got sharpers. And fold that back into the wreath base. So that won't damage any doors, and the hydrangea flower is firmly in place. So we can now also add in other bits and pieces. So take the stub wire, slot it into some of the bits of the top of the fir cone, create a new stem, and just slot it into the base, making sure that you catch the wire behind and thread those back into the base. Similarly, if you want fruit, so take some stub wire. Two often looks nicer than one, I think. Again, just take a short bit, wrap it round to create a short stem, trying to get the end of that wire as neat as possible, and then add it into your wreath, catching it the other side. Again, cutting off any excess and pushing the tail back in to the wreath so we've got no sharp ends. So I'm going to go through and add in the extra bits of decoration that I think is required, and I'll see you at the other end. And there we have it, the final wreath. I just added a few fir cones, a bit of apple, and I kind of thought that was enough. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know what type of fir, what type of wreath you enjoy making.